Oh yeah, it feels great.
Good News in Oakland here live at City Hall Council Chambers in downtown Oakland. I'm here with Mr. Tim Westergren with Pandora Radio. Mr. Westergren, Tim, can I call you that?
Please.
Yes, Tim. It is a pleasure to have you on Good News in Oakland here at the Entrepreneurship World Day. Talk about, first of all, what WED is and what it means to have it here in Oakland.
Well, I think it's a celebration of entrepreneurship, which it's essentially, encouraging people to choose the path of entrepreneurship and sort of saying this city is behind you in doing that. And I think, entrepreneurship can kind of be a lonely path, so it's good to get communities behind it. So I think that's kind of the purpose.
Now, Pandora has a home in Oakland. You just talked about in your commentary that this feels like home. Talk about your experience here in Oakland and how Pandora feels to be here.
Yeah, well, so we've been here almost a decade. We moved here in the end of 2000, and it's felt like home from the beginning. And it's actually been really fun to witness the changes in the last 10 years because our area has grown and grown, more and more activity. But I think as a company, sort of our identity, who we are, our roots in music, and the sort of cultural breadth and depth of what we do, feels like a really natural fit for Oakland. So when I come to work and the people that are around us just feels like Pandora.
You talked about Oakland as being, a cultural center, a place that's hot for music. Talk about that.
Well, I mean, Oakland East Bay has roots, a history, and it has particular areas: jazz, hip hop, rap. It's got a lot of history in those genres. But I think, just generally speaking, music is part of its identity. And Pandora is not about a particular kind of music, but it's nice to be at a place that whose identity is tied up in that. So it feels like we belong. It feels like our kin.
Well, it's good news in Oakland to be talking about the entrepreneurial spirit. And what do you think about entrepreneurship being a stimulus for the country as well as for Oakland?
Well, I think entrepreneurship is the cornerstone of business communities. I mean, every company, large or small, started with an entrepreneur, and I think that our own experience, even just in Oakland here, as a startup company, you're really aware of how you're connected to the community when you get going, because you work with landlords, you work with local retailers, you work with shops and restaurants, and as you grow, you go from being kind of one of the little guys to having a lot of employees, and the employees care about where they eat and how your transportation and the cultural events around, the kind of richness of their lives. And as a business, you start to really think about those interconnections. And so I think, communities, as businesses go, so go communities, because they really sort of feed each other.
That's great news. And what would you say to the entrepreneurs here in Oakland, about how to survive? You talked about in your commentary something phenomenal. You said it took 2 years to really get capital. You had about $1.5 million in back pay to employees. You owed about $200,000 in personal debt, 11 maxed out credit cards. Wow, that is phenomenal, Tim. And you're still here. Talk to our entrepreneurs here locally and abroad about what it takes to really sustain.
Yeah, I mean, phenomenal is one word for it. Crazy might be another. But I think that every entrepreneur is going to go through their version of what we went through. Hopefully it's not as long, but you're probably going to go through some dry spell where it's going to be financially tough, but maybe just as importantly, or even more importantly, it's going to be emotionally hard, because you're not going to know if you've made a good choice or not. You don't have markers that tell you, okay, you're on your way, you're getting there little by little. It's typically more feast or famine. You're doing it for a while, and you don't know if what you're doing is actually resonating, has a future at all. It's like climbing a mountain and not seeing the summit, and not knowing how far you have to go, and if you're going to be able to last to get there. So I think the first thing as an entrepreneur is embrace that. Know that when you go into entrepreneurship, you're signing up for a lot of uncertainty, lots of fear and doubt and all those things, but accept that as an experience, and as you go through it, know that you're not the only one who's doing it, that's been done before, and take strength in that. Don't be daunted by it, and don't be self-conscious about it, which I think is a real Achilles heel for entrepreneurs.
We have a lot of young entrepreneurs as well, lastly, and we want to get your last comments to the young entrepreneurs out there, the young musicians. How can they be involved with Pandora, and what would you say to the young entrepreneurs?
Well, for young entrepreneurs, hey, try it. You're young. Why not? I think if you haven't given it a shot, the worst thing you can do is wind up years later saying, oh, if only I had tried something. Whether it works out or not, you're going to learn a lot. It's going to, I think, empower you in a lot of ways, teach you a lot of things, and you may wind up in an ideal situation building a business where you control your own life, you run your own life, you make your own decisions, you've invented something and built it, which is profoundly satisfying. So I think, give it a shot. As for musicians, Pandora is an absolutely level playing field. If you have a CD, there's a submission process online, and you should really go there, go to the website, and submit some songs for consideration. And if you wind up in the music genome, which is Pandora's database, you will wind up on the radio.
Well, this is good news in Oakland, Tim, and it's a pleasure to have you. The Music Genome Project, the fact that you have now, I think 35,000 users added on daily with the iPhone. That is good news in Oakland, and it's a pleasure to have your business here centered in Oakland, and we're glad to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Good news in Oakland! Oh, yeah, it feels great.